Arab identity in the medieval Middle East fulfilled two different functions: a shared culture throughout the Muslim world and a specific regional identity in the Middle East. Firstly, Arabic had an immense contribution towards a shared cultural space. Arabization allowed the different ethnicities to have a shared language and culture. Arabic, the language of Islam, of Muslim imperial administration in the medieval period, and of Islamic science, served as a link between remote and very different groups. Muslim travel literature allows us to comprehend how Arabic was used to negotiate cultural gaps. 10th century Al-Muqaddasi traveled from Jerusalem east to Central Asia and west to North Africa. 14th century Ibn Battuta, maybe the greatest pre-modern Muslim traveler, went from North Africa south to West Africa, then east to the Horn of Africa and the Arabian Peninsula, north to Turkish Anatolia, and further east to Iraq, Iran, Central Asia, India, and beyond. Without Arabic acting as the lingua franca, the bridge language, travelers couldn't have communicated with indigenous peoples, be it Berbers in North Africa or have rapport with Turks from Central Asia. Secondly, Arabic was also part of a specific Arab Middle Eastern identity. Our task for now is to understand the local features of Arab Muslim identity and how it changed throughout time. Overall, Arabism wasn't necessarily an ethnic origin, but could also be a concept, an idea, and a set of values. During the first 150 years, under the Rashidun caliphs and then the Umayyads, Arab identity was a key in gaining an entry to elite circles. Arab identity in this period meant fluency in Arabic language, but mainly Arab lineage and Arab ethnicity. Hence, Arabization, that is, immersion into Arab culture by non-Arabs, didn't suffice for the Rashidun and Umayyads to regard the newcomers as full and equal members. This cultural concept had specific social and political consequences on the ground. For instance, only those of Arab descent were promoted to high positions near the Umayyad center of power and the army. Furthermore, the Umayyad marriage strategy dictated they marry only with noble Arab families. The clear preference of Arab Muslims over other groups in the expanding Muslim state pushed some non-Arabs to forge family histories. The strategy to advance was pretending to be descendants of Arabs from Arabia. The Abbasids, being the descendants of one of Muhammad's uncles, were a noble Arab family, like the Umayyads. They continued using Arabic and were proud of Arab poetry and history. The Abbasid court even went further and regarded pre-Islamic Arab past as a cultural model for the behavior of a noble Muslim. The Abbasid court and scholars subscribed to the negative judgment of the Jahiliyyah, that is, the polytheist past of Arabia. Yet the Abbasids differentiated between the religious aspect of the pre-Islamic period, which was totally rejected, and the nomadic and tribal past of the desert to which they had a sense of cultural nostalgia. The Abbasid court and elite lived in palaces in urban settings in the Fertile Crescent. Even more than the Umayyads, whose many of their palaces and estates were in or near the deserts, the everyday reality of the Abbasid elite was hardly that of the rough Arabian desert. Yet muruwa, that is, the values and qualities associated with the pre-Islamic Arab men and their tribal and nomadic way of life, was regarded as the cultural norms upon which to educate young Abbasid princes. These were values like hospitality, loyalty, pride and dignity, etc. For this reason, the Abbasids were interested in pre-Islamic Arab poetry. They sponsored its collection, careful editing, and transfer from orality to the medium of writing. During the Abbasid period, there was a major shift in the meaning of Arab culture and identity. In other words, the key to be accepted as an Arab was mastery of the language and immersion of cultural values, rather than boasting an Arab lineage. Indeed, many Arabized non-Arabs rose in the social and political ladder since the Abbasid period. Let's look again at the Barmakids, a family of great power under the Abbasids. Their name cropped up when we discussed the Abbasid court. This strong and wealthy family of bureaucrats in the early Abbasid period was of Iranian origin. They Arabized and even sponsored translations of scientific texts to Arabic. The change in what it meant to be an Arab gave the Barmakids, and many more like them, the entry ticket to a world that was thus far closed and sealed for them. It is though that the sheer numbers of non-Arabs in the great Muslim empires required a conceptual change. The exact identification of cause and result may be blurred, but the cultural shift and its social repercussions were very clear and noticeable from the Abbasid period and beyond. Next, we shall focus on Arabic language and alphabet. We'll talk about the arts of the book and the unique artistic aesthetics associated with this specific language.